So welcome to part 2 of the preview show for round 1 of the 2020 NHL playoffs. Of course, I'm your host, the Sports Moose. We're ready to go here, talking about the other 4 series in the 2020 NHL playoffs. Thanks so much for joining us. And of course, chat is live. So we're going to get right to it. If you're joining us live, of course, feel free to interact with us on chat. Of course, I know quite a few of you guys are going to be listening to this on your cars, in the shower, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast while you're exercising. So make sure you add us, Thunderdome Puckcast, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Your favorite podcasting platforms. We're there. And episode 21 should be up by tomorrow, both halves, part 1 and part 2. So we're going to jump right into the first game. Well, I guess technically not the first game that happened today. If you remember, because of how long the Lightning game went, they had to push back the Carolina-Boston game, and that had I think an 11 Eastern start this morning. So first thing in the morning, hockey, and great game. I didn't get to view too much of it. I was kind of following it on box score and like Game Center. Of course, at work, I got to keep working, right? It's the only bad thing about hockey. I love that there's hockey all day, but it's kind of tough when it's during the week. So you're kind of getting your updates and viewing stats. Great game. Kind of hilarious that it went to double overtime, right? You're thinking, oh no, here we go again. Here's going to be another some more overtime for the Eastern Conference. Thankfully, only 2 overtimes. Boston sneaking one here. My pick was Carolina in Game 1, if you remember Risky Business. Yeah. Ooh, thanks for the follow. Looks like we got a follow. We appreciate the follow. I wonder if they're all going to start cascading now. I think that was a new follow, so we appreciate the new follow. So yeah, let's hop right into the first series. We'll have the stuff right there in front of you. And this is kind of my sneaky pick here. One. Thanks for the like. Appreciate it. Good to see DJ Khaled on the screen. So here's my sneak pick here. And we've already seen it come to fruition. We've already seen it happen. Good stuff happening for the New York Islanders. Don't let those 80 points fool you. I think they were playing their best hockey not only coming into the break, but also heading here into the play-in games. I mean, New Jersey or the Islanders, of course, coming in playing. Fortunate to only play the Florida Panthers. I think that was a pretty easy series for them, but they are among the best defensive teams, and I think the best prepared to play in the playoffs. I mean, you saw it with the Lightning last year. It's run and gun kind of style. Like, yes, we're going to score 5 goals a game, but as soon as the playoffs come, ice is a lot smaller, and you got to find a way to win 2-1 games, 3-2 games, and grind them out. Islanders, I think, are really built for this, and we're going to look at the stats in a moment. Of course, I mean, far and away, we know Washington's an offensive juggernaut. Offense is a little bit down this year, but they can still basically score at will, even though Ovechkin's on the back 9 and on the decline of his career. You know, they can still score. They still have big goal scorers. I think Ovechkin didn't even lead the way this year for the Capitals. Let's look at their point totals. John Carlson actually probably going to win the best of the Norris this year, 75 points from the blue line. So he was a defenseman leading him in scoring. Ovechkin actually number 2, and then Nicholas Backstrom, of course, always up there with Ovechkin. So let's look at some of the stats a little bit more closely. Of course, offense. Washington Capitals putting on a show. They scored, I think, maybe second or third most goals. Third most goals in the league with 236. Islanders near the bottom at 189. Of course, their game is very much not offense. It's playing a sound defensive game and capitalizing on mistakes. And and for that reason, their defense is rated much better. Of course, as you can expect, Washington's pretty excellent in their high danger scoring percentage, and actually, that's one of the measures we look at. Only 1.5 percentage points higher than the Islanders, but really, where I give the advantage to New York again is controlling those goals, the goals against average. Some of that veiled by some great goaltending by Varlamov this year. But again, more often than not, the Islanders were controlling high danger chances and scoring chances against for the most part. Actually, Washington's defense doing pretty well in that regard. But again, they gave up a pretty decent amount of goals this year. Again, looking on 5-on-5 play, Washington typically carries play where the Islanders, again, are they're not a puck possession team. Again, they're kind of sitting back and waiting defensively. They're going to play dump and chase and then and capitalize on mistakes. So I gave the check mark to New York for that reason on defense. I think goaltending, despite the year that Varlamov has been having, I think you got to go with some experience here. And I know Holtby got the start, and I think that this is where we're seeing kind of a shortcoming. I think we're going to see Samsonov in net sooner rather than later for the Capitals, and it might be as soon as next game because, spoiler alert, the Islanders lost 4-2, I think, this afternoon. Yep, 4-2 this afternoon against the Capitals. The Islanders won. They beat the Capitals 4-2. So I think we're going to be seeing Samsonov in there pretty quickly, and as soon as next game. His statistics were much better than Holtby, and I think they were rolling with some experience there. Of course, Varlamov had a pretty good season. Him and Thomas Greiss really holding it down for the Islanders in net. But I think I gave the slight edge in goaltending to Washington just because of sometimes playoff Holtby is better than regular season Holtby. Power play and penalty kill, I think were even, and they might have been inverses that one was better than the other. Took the power play numbers. Washington at about 19.5%, New York at 17.5%. Pretty big difference there. We're looking at position in the league, kind of mid-tier. And then in terms of penalty kill, Capitals and Islanders pretty much even in that perspective. So slight edge. If you had to give a slight edge, I mean, maybe you'd go with the Capitals, but I scored them as even. I think coaching, this is really a fascinating matchup because, of course, it's the former coach of the Washington Capitals is now the coach of the Islanders. And there's a lot of drama because Barry Trotz took the Capitals to the Cup and then abruptly resigned and was signed by the Islanders and has been making headway with the Islanders. So I know he wants this series really badly. So we're hoping. I'm hoping. I'm a Barry Trotz fan. I've had some respect for him. Hoping he can get the job done against Capitals, and I think he gives them the nod or the check mark in coaching. And overall, I think this is a pick-em. But and my pick is the Islanders to win this series. Again, I think this goes 6 or 7 with the Islanders ultimately coming out on top because of that commitment to defense. Not that the Capitals can't do it, but I think we saw it today. They were trying run and gun, and the Islanders kept to their game plan, stayed back, and were able to counterattack and capitalize on a few of their mistakes. So the official moose call for Islanders and Capitals, it's going to have to be the Islanders. Some of the big players for New York, of course, I think we've talked about Matthew Barzal this year. Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, a Notre Dame alum from the Notre Dame hockey program. Josh Bailey actually having a pretty decent year scoring-wise, a -12, though. Eesh. Cizikas is one of my favorite grinders, +12 this year. always good to see Nick Leddy playing as well. So hopefully they can control the ice. They got to control the pace. Washington, again, is going to try to play some really fast north-south versus east and west. And almost like Columbus was doing to the Lightning, they're going to have to adjust and play that game because it's now time to grind in the playoffs. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. The official pick, though, I think the Islanders pulled this off in a little bit of an upset. A little bit of an upset in this series. Next, this is probably as close to a mismatch as you can get. Even though I'm scoring a few of these even, but really, I guess points-wise, of course, the teams are pretty well separated. As much as I want Arizona to be a team of destiny, I just don't think they have. Think they have it in the tank for Colorado. I think Colorado's the team to beat in the West, and I think we're going to see that pretty rapidly here. Again, this game already finished early in the afternoon, and that was actually 0-0 for quite a bit. It looked like another game was going to be going to overtime, and Colorado scored 3 goals in like 2 minutes in the end of the third period to take the lead and kind of put that away. So, again, that's just points out the firepower that Colorado has. But again, kind of like we pointed out in the play-in series, the qualifying series for Arizona, they've got sneaky firepower as well. It's just, I think, Colorado's better prepared to take that on. I think Nashville, when we talked about that, when we previewed that series, I think they were pretty much, despite a 6 seed, they were even with the Coyotes in most areas. And honestly, I think they were worse in a couple key areas. I think this is not the case here, despite statistics and what recent play looks like. And again, I know I'm scoring them pretty even on defense, which I know is kind of weird. You know, Colorado's been pretty good on defense most of the year, but I'm scoring them even just because of Arizona's recent play. And I think Arizona has the advantage in goal because Darcy Kemper, more experienced than Francouz or I think they actually started Grubauer. And I know Grubauer had some experience last year backing up Holtby when he was having a hard time. But I think Darcy Kemper has been the man this whole year, and definitely in the stretch for the Coyotes. And I think he can get the job done on the back end for them. I just don't know if they have the firepower to go toe-to-toe with Colorado. I mean, you're going to have to have some pretty spectacular performances from Darcy Kemper to take it a 7-game series. Looking at the PK and PP numbers, believe it or not, they're pretty even. And again, coaching-wise, you're looking at Rick Tocchet, and who was the coach for? Let me look that up really quick. Usually have everyone memorized. Hope it's not another interim guy. No, it's Jared Bednar. And Bednar, I know, has been there for 4 years now, still establishing his name in terms of an NHL coach. And Rick Tocchet, interim coach for the Lightning and longtime assistant coach, through the Pittsburgh system and a few other teams. Finally getting his crack to coach with Arizona, and I think that he's a locker room guy, and the guys are playing for him. So I put the coaching even there, but overall, better team. It's just Colorado. It has to be Colorado. Let's look at the goaltending statistics again. We talked about. Let me hop over to Colorado. Talked about for Kemper versus either Grubauer or Francouz, and it looks like they went with Grubauer. Again, Darcy Kemper has been overperforming. We talked about GSAA in part 1, that being the goals saved above average. Darcy Kemper's in the 16 range versus, even Francouz and Grubauer. They're averaging kind of 10 when you look at their statistics altogether. Lightning game is at 3 Eastern tomorrow. 3 Eastern tomorrow. We had a question come across on chat. I believe it's on NBC Sports. I have to look up NBC Sports, or I think in the Tampa area it's on Sun Sports because they're still doing the local channels. So I'll have to sneak away and watch that one maybe a little early tomorrow. Lucky for me, it was 5 overtimes, right? I got home right as overtime was starting. I got to watch almost 2 games, and it was great. I appreciated Lightning. So again, goals against average, Grubauer 263, Darcy Kemper among the lowest in the league, 2.22, which is pretty phenomenal. 930 save percentage for Darcy Kemper, and again Grubauer kind of 915, 917, hovering in that range. So advantage in goaltending clearly to the Coyotes, and it's really the only clear advantage that they have. Looking at some of the team statistics before we move on to our next matchup, of course, we talked about power play being pretty dead even, 19%, and even PKs were pretty dead even at 81.5%. Shots, this is really where the offensive advantage is. Your shooting percentage for Colorado's near 11 versus 8.5, which is a big deal. That's a pretty big difference. And again, the high danger conversion rate of even a difference of 1% makes a big deal. 28 for Colorado, and actually 34 conversions for the Coyotes, which is really interesting. In terms of scoring chances, it's usually Colorado in the driver's seat. I think they have the highest scoring chance percentage, 4th in the league. So again, they're generating shot volume, and they're generating chances, and a lot of high danger chances as well. So that's it in a nutshell for that series. I'm picking the Avs. You got to pick the Avs on this one. Another 12 seed getting through. Of course, we talked about Chicago yesterday, and they had a tough time last night. But another 12 seed, the Montreal Canadiens and Carey Price. The Montreal Carey Prices versus probably my sneak pick. I wonder if it works out that it's Lightning Flyers in the Eastern Conference Finals, because I think that would be an amazing series. Having the Lightning and the Flyers as the final 2 teams standing in the East. This is a pretty heavy mismatch. You see the Avs basically under 500, barely sneaking into the playoffs, but they were able to get by the Penguins. I don't think they get by the other Pennsylvania team, the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers just absolutely high-flying on offense and defense. Gonna give them the advantage in goaltending, of course. When you have playoff Carey Price in there, you never know what can happen. I just don't think he has 4 shutouts in him, because that may be the only way they can pull it off. I think they're playing right now in the 3rd period. Let's check the score. 2-1 Flyers. 2-1 Flyers. So Carey Price keeping them in it. That Philadelphia offense is so good. And we saw that on full display against the Lightning. I mean, they made the Lightning look pretty bad and pretty silly. All right, let's get to my Flyers prep page. Got my prep pages all done. Pulling a few of the key stats for your education on what's going on. Of course, 24, the Canadiens were the last team to make the playoffs at the 24 seed. Offensively, of course, shooting percentage, again, kind of similar to Colorado and Arizona. Big, almost a 2% difference, 10.5, 8.5. It is a 2% difference. So again, Philly's offense, 227 goals scored. I think that was good enough for 5th. And Montreal down with only 200 goals scored for the year. So offense, a little bit down. When you're looking at kind of like head-to-head, pretty surprised with Konechny leading the Flyers in scoring, Couturier on there, Voracek and Giroux. Montreal, it was Thomas Tatar. That was actually pretty surprising. And then everyone else kind of in the 40s. So again, not too much primary or secondary scoring with the Canadiens. Wow, nice to see Nick Suzuki getting up there. See, Montreal's going to be good in a couple years, depending on the play they get on Price, who's kind of aging a little bit. Yeah, Carey Price getting into his mid-30s. I think he's still got a couple good years left in him. But Montreal's going to be good in a couple years. You got to watch out. They got a couple young kids coming up. Penalty kill, power play, of course, that advantage still goes to the Flyers. And I know we were talking about goaltending. Even though Carter Hart is going to be an incredible talent for the league, I'm going off of experience and I'm going off of reputation right now. Got to go Carey Price, even though his play has been a little subpar on average, but he always finds a way to bring it for the playoffs. All right, some of the key stats, of course: power play, penalty kill. Flyers 81.9 on the PK. Montreal 78. They're in the lower half of the league in that. Power play 20%, 21% versus 17.5%. That's a big difference as well. I just think Philadelphia's clearly the better team. They have Vigneault. I think Alain is their coach, hopping in. And overall, they're just a better team. I mean, as much as I respect the Montreal coaching staff. Who's the guy that came over from Boston? God, I'm the worst at remembering names right now. Claude Julien, of course, jumping over. Big respect for him as a coach, but I think the Flyers right now are flying high, no pun intended, and should be able to take care of them probably in 5 games. Maybe they sneak a win here. Still 2-1, though. 8 minutes left to go. All right, and I think that brings us to our last one, right? Last matchup of the night tonight, of course, the late night game. You're looking at the Vancouver Canucks and the defending Stanley Cup champions, St. Louis Blues. The Blues haven't been looking like the defending Stanley Cup champions. I don't know if maybe it was kind of like Boston where they decided to sit out the round robin and whatever seed they got. But I think they were firmly entrenched here in the fourth, and the fourth seed kind of like Boston, and they're gonna have to play a tough Vancouver team. And again, similar to the Flyers situation, I think Vancouver's too young. I don't think they're ready quite yet to grind it against obviously a very experienced team, a very good team. Really no advantages to say. I mean, maybe goaltending because Markstrom's been pretty phenomenal this year, but on the offensive and defensive side of the puck, and even on special teams, clear distinct advantage for the Blues. Coaching as well, Berube with the experience, and overall just they're a better team. I mean, let's look at the numbers. The numbers never lie. Well, let's look at some of the stats. Ryan O'Reilly and David Perron, the leading scorers, with Braden Shed and Jaden Schwartz. Petrangelo, all above 50 points. So pretty nice spread of points there. And then looking at Vancouver, some of their big scorers. JT Miller, he was a big loss for the Lightning. I was really sad that we had to make the move. We needed some. What did we get? I think we ended up getting a pick and maybe part of some return from this. Maybe Barclay Goodrow was part of that. I forget. But Miller having a really good year, 72 points, and the wonder kid for Vancouver, Elias Peterson, 66 points. A great sophomore campaign after. Did he win the Calder last year? I think he won the Calder last year. And Bo Horvat having a great year. Brock Besser, Quinn Hughes, another big name. You're going to hear about Quinn Hughes in the next 3 years on the defensive front for Vancouver. So a couple good names out there. Dependable Jay Beagle contributing with a few points here and there. He's more of your grinder. And it was good to see Antoine Roussel, one of the few French players in the league. I was glad to see him land on his feet. I know kind of a weird situation in Dallas. Ended up moving on to Vancouver. And then some of your key stats to consider. In goal, I fully expect Binnington for the Blues, Jacob Markstrom for Vancouver. Again, looking at your GSAA, Markstrom's been phenomenal this year, and they're going to be super stacked in goal in a few years. We've talked about Thatcher Demko a little bit this year. Kind of a down. First time that he's been serving as backup, kind of like Vassy when he came up, when he was a young goalie. Yeah, I think he's only 24, so Demko should be ready to go in the next few years. Again, Markstrom, 11.4 on the GSAA. Goals against average, 2.75. And again, I think Vancouver's defense was a little suspect most of the year. Almost a 9.20 save percentage. That's pretty respectable. Binnington kind of had a down year this year. He was closer to 0.910 on the save percentage, 2.6 goals against average. So again, pretty normal numbers for him. And again, looking at GSAA, only 3.31. So again, he was a functional player. He played okay. He didn't lose many games for the Blues, but definitely a difference from the performance we got from him last year. Some key stats, of course. Blues offense, pretty good, 223 goals. Vancouver right up there with 224. But I think the key difference in offense, again, you got to look at what's going on in the high danger areas and how often you're converting on your scoring chances. And this is really where the difference was. 15% conversion rate in high danger for the Blues versus 10 in Vancouver. I mean, that 5% difference is huge, absolutely huge. And then on the flop side, the opponent's conversion percentage and why we gave the advantage on defense to St. Louis. 11% for St. Louis, 15% for opponents for Vancouver. Again, 4% is a lot. That's 1 or 2 goals a game that you may not have given up. High danger, 4 usually, 43% for St. Louis, 51 for Vancouver. So they're getting in the high danger areas, but they're not converting. So whether that they're playing a hot goalie more nights than other teams, or maybe their shots aren't pinpoint accurate. I think the Blues have right now on paper at least, have a more formidable offensive attack, and they're my pick. They're my pick for this series. I'm curious to see what happens next series. I think there could be some really good matchups if everything goes this way for those matchups. So those are the last 4 matchups. Finally, we're able to cover those. Sorry I couldn't get them to you yesterday as part 2, follow-up to part 1 of our preview. So that is it for us tonight on the Thunderdome Puckcast, ending episode part number 2.